Everyone always wants to be right. Why is it so hard to accept that maybe we just can't know anything for sure? Because it is impossible to know everything, and if we don't know everything, we cannot truly know anything at all. We want to be on the side of hard-hitting facts and definitive existences, I guess because we live in a paradigm defined by rationality and science. Ironically, though, it's through the principles of science itself that one can realize how flawed it actually is. Science and rationality do provide valuable insight, yes, but that doesn't mean their principles magically provide us with any certainty or all the truths of reality. Think fifth grade science, for example. Things are definitively what they are only if we can determine so by controlling all the variables and testing all characteristics in a controlled environment. Water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. But does that mean that the temperature is what's causing the water to boil? What if in actuality, every time the temperature reaches 100 degrees, fire spirits come and blow warm bubbles into the water or something? Technically, this can't be disproven, so why would most people write it off as ridiculous or impossible? The answer is because it's not rational, and things that cannot be perceived by the senses are considered to not exist. But how do we know that whatever is real can be perceived by our senses? We do not. Humanity progresses and reinvents its beliefs about what is real and what isn't every once in a while. How are we so sure that what we hold to be true today won't be tomorrow? How can we ever be certain that the paradigm of today is the paradigm of forever? We cannot. So then why do we believe with such conviction when we cannot know anything for sure? Why do all justifications come from rationality when it clearly cannot provide any certification? Will we ever really be truly certain? No, we won't. Why do we confine ourselves to these paradigms when the most logical thing to accept is that we will never know anything for certain? So why use one set of ideas to deliberate all decisions made? When the British came to the subcontinent, so did their paradigm. They gradually forced India out of its state of coexistence with nature to emitting carbons on behalf of themselves and their colonizers. They set up our modern economies and taught people to fight against each other for money, for status, for honor, for worth. They did so on the basis of their ways of life being superior and more comfortable, more efficiently run. Turns out those things may have not been all that worth sacrificing their traditional ways of life for. They may not have been worth climate change and the collapse of natural ecosystems and pollution and smog. Until this day, we perpetuate their ways. They left us empty, war-stricken, poverty-stricken, a whole lot of other things stricken, but we are burning coal and oil until we can no longer breathe because, God forbid, we violate our colonizers' superior ideas of economy and lifestyle. The environmental crisis is only one example of how rationalism is a flawed paradigm. Another example is capitalism and its backbone, survival of the fittest. Survival of the fittest is supported by the paradigm of rationalism. It is rational to believe that if you work hard, you'll make it big. But what about the people that worked their entire lives but just never got the right opportunity? Because no matter what Forbes is spelling about self made billionaires, nobody is truly ever self made. You were given something by somebody, even if it was just an opportunity. It is essentially dumb luck whether you get that opportunity or not. But of course, by this logic, it may not be justifiable for people to collect massive amounts of wealth for themselves, when in actuality it has little to do with them in the first place. So I guess it's more convenient to stick to the hard work narrative. Maybe you're wondering that if we abandon all paradigms, how would we organize ourselves? How would we have consensus in society? If manuals and autopilot don't work for our day-to-day lives, what makes people think that it'll work for a justice system or for governments? When people live in smaller groups or tribes, they know each other and they know their government and who to trust with decisions. If they're small enough of a group, democracy could work too. Big nations and complicated bureaucracies are not designed to be harmonious, consensual places. But hey, nobody's a superpower if people are happy, right? There was a simpler time when people bore more material hardships but fewer spiritual and emotional ones. They focused less on themselves and their status and other people's perceptions of them, and more on the world around them and their own internal perceptions. Perhaps this is why there was less mental illness, less stress, less attachment to mortal life. Take the first people that ever existed, they would theoretically be the happiest, lightest beings spiritually and emotionally, but would have had the most material hardships, having shorter lifespans or being hurt in the process of meeting their material needs. As time progressed, people learned to deal with their material hardships through connecting and inventing. This caused them to have to sacrifice some of the peace from their emotional and spiritual realm. They become more ambitious, more conscious of how others see them, for example. I'm not saying that we should go all the way back to the beginning, but maybe somewhere in the middle will suffice. A balance where we have enough to survive and we are detached enough to not cling to life or to people, to things, to everything impermanent so that we live more peacefully. Because at the end of the day, all our problems come from our attachments, whether that be from physical things like wealth and people, or from abstract things like ideas, the ego, or beliefs. They are all worldly things, impermanent, material things that will one day not exist. So why fight to sculpt our life around them? Why destroy the environment to climb the ladder of social and financial success? Why not just live to live and stop chasing things that essentially, ultimately, don't matter? I'm also not saying that we should completely detach ourselves, otherwise, we'd never survive at all. But today's cutthroat capitalist world needs less concrete and a little more compassion. If we would all live moderately, maybe everyone could have a share. Maybe being born disadvantaged wouldn't mean a life of damnation. Maybe we meet our material needs without causing environmental catastrophe. And maybe one day we'll get there.
जो काला वाला था ना वो करता जरूर वो जो आपके पास गया ना उसका चार्जर काम करेगा इसके साथ
नहीं नहीं इसके साथ नहीं करेगा वो डिफरेंट टाइप है
अच्छा
हाँ वो सी टाइप है ये एंड्रॉइड
ये
का
तो जैज वाला जो है ना ये बिल्कुल डिफरेंट टाइप है
This all may sound very idealistic, almost completely unrealistic, but for there to be any changes to the insanely complicated problems we see in the world today, we must simplify our lives. As the saying goes, you give, you get, not you get, and keep on getting. I guess my point is that the way that we're thinking right now and the paradigms that we're living in are not where it's at. And perhaps the next paradigm won't be either. We need to give up consumerism and status symbols, and we need to give up the models of development and economy that we have internalized to be the only way to live. Give them up before it's too late.